Raquel R. James is the proud author of Better Not Bitter Baby, the devotional of becoming the woman you're called to be, 22 Days of Affirming Truth. Raquel is committed to helping women change the trajectories of their lives as they define their what next and what now. Raquel is a psychotherapist and master lifestyle strategist. She holds a social work degree from Fordham University in New York, and you can visit raquelrjames.com for more information of all the great things she has to offer.
Today, our special guests are Raquel James and Arielle Wozniak. How are you guys today?
We are wonderful, or at least I speak for me.
You talk for yourself. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Glad to hear it.
Well, I'm so happy to have you ladies on today, this mother-daughter duo. These dynamic ladies have been a part of my life for a while now, and I invited you guys on because you have such an authentic, healthy communication style and relationship that I have not seen common in mother-daughter relationships, especially adult children and their parents. For you guys to have such an authentic, loving relationship. So you guys can share nuggets. I know you're not perfect, but I just want you to open up and share your experience because there are some jewels there. So, I mean, I think you're experts, but call yourself what you like. So, Raquel, you wrote the book, Better Not Bitter Baby. What compelled you to write the book, and what's the overall message of the book?
So what I will say is that it was really a Holy Spirit-led project that had been brewing for about 4 years or so. And as you know, Tavoya, I started and sat on it. And then one day the Holy Spirit said, okay, you need to finish this. And so I literally sat down probably in about a week, maybe about a week or so. And I was up day and night, just whatever he was downloading, I was trying to put it on that paper or that computer, just type it in. And so the overall purpose is really for women to take their own struggles, their stories, their experiences, those things that we look at that have made us jaded and bitter, whether it's relationships or our own personal sins, things that we think we can't overcome, and it leaves us with this spirit of bitterness and resentment. To take those things, use them as lessons and tools, find the scripture and speak to that part of us that needs to be affirmed so that we can move forward in a healthy way and essentially become better, whether it's as parents or just as individuals in our workplaces. So the goal is to go from just what the title implies, better, from bitter to better.
I love the book. I read it several times. I have notes in all the margins. And I found, as I was telling you prior to the interview, I read it again because I read it the first time it came out at your lunch party. Yay. Right after. It was amazing. And I read it again recently, and so things that I had highlighted before were not the things that stood out this time. So I just want to encourage people to know, moms, you specifically, that just as you're getting these tools for your daughter, Raquel's book is one great example that those life lessons that you've learned are going to be applicable in this season, next season, and seasons to come. So don't discount anything that's happened in the past because it all works for wherever God's taking you, including parenting teenage girls. So, did you have any takeaways from the book that you wanted to share?
Well, I read it now, what was that, whenever it first came out.
2 years ago.
Yeah, so 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I have the memory of a goldfish, so it's kind of gone. I just remember like kind of the feelings and the emotions that I felt going through it. Similar to what you were saying, like it does, like it uplifts you and makes you feel like I am all those things. Like why am I allowing the world or even my mind to tell me something different than what I truly am? And so for me, it was just a good reminder that like, here's who God says that I am. Here's what my true identity is, not like what I might think. And sometimes what you think is totally wrong from like who you actually are. So
Oftentimes.
yeah.
And in spite of the emotions that come up to try to confirm what you think, doesn't make it true. So we have you here. Let's begin to talk about healthy communication. So what are some things that parents can do to establish healthy communication strategies with their teens?
Well, I think most often it starts before teen years. But not to say that you can't do it at that point in time. But what needs to happen is you need to let your children know that that line of communication is always open. And sometimes for them it sounds redundant, like, oh my gosh, I can talk to her, I can't talk to her because she doesn't understand. She was never a teenager, and she's really old. Arielle has told me once before, what'd you tell me? Back in the dinosaur age. So, you know,
I have a lot of old people jokes.
she has tons of them, and she's had them since she was a teenager. And so letting them know that you really can relate and you're there to listen. So they may or may not accept that, but if you continue to repeat it, they get it. What I found is that we tell our children things, we think they don't hear us at all because they behave as if they heard nothing you said. And then one day you realize, oh my gosh, you were listening? You heard me? That's amazing.
Wow.
So just to really let them know that you mean that, you know. Quick example, the first time I think I really realized that she had listened all along was when she was leaving for college. And you left me a letter, goldfish memory. What I do. So she was leaving for college, and we packed up everything, got her to school. When I came back, you know, and I don't know if she knew I'd go in her room, but you know, as a mother, you just left your kid at college, and you go back in the room, kind of stare around, and feel kind of like, oh, she's gone. She's really gone 45 minutes away, you know. And so I go back, and there's a letter addressed to me, and so I pick it up and I read this letter. And I could tell that she had a new understanding and a new appreciation for me and for our relationship. But the big thing was she went to school, and her roommate wasn't a person who woke up early in the morning. Arielle was late for high school every day of senior year. And the bus literally came to our porch. She just needed to walk down the stairs and stand. And she was late every day, so I would drive her to school. And she got to college, and she was the person waking up every morning and waking up her roommate.
Oh, wow.
And she was the person complaining about these dirty children in her apartment, like, clean up, clean up. She was like the clean kid and the early riser.
Yeah.
In the whole senior year, I kept saying, you're gonna have to get up. I don't know how you're gonna make it in school because you don't get up in the morning. Oh, who's gonna clean up that? Do the dishes. She went to school and heard everything, called me to tell me the same stuff I was telling her. It amazed me.
Oh, wow. That is so cool.
Yeah,
Wow. That's funny. Do you remember what prompted you to write the letter?
No.
What's funny is like I like the way my memory is because then like I'll watch a movie, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that happened.
Brand new.
And I'll have watched it like 3 times. So but I mean I can assume the reason why I wrote it. I'm just not a very like outwardly emotional person, so I like to put things in writing so you at least know like here's how I am feeling, because you can't always tell how I feel based on how I look. So that was probably why I wrote it, and I just know that she is more emotional, and she probably would be like sad that I was leaving. And I mean, her and my sister literally sang to me as I was walking away. Like they were very invested in this, and so I think the letter was maybe just my way of like showing, you know, like I can do that as well, and I can show you my emotions and how I'm kind of feeling about the situation too, and just wanted her to know that like she said, the things that she did tell me that I actually did hear it. I didn't necessarily want to listen in those moments because I didn't need to. Like if I didn't clean up, it was fine. She was gonna clean up.
Right.
So I didn't have to worry about those things. But if I'm away at college and someone else does a clean up, then we just all live in it. So I didn't really have a choice.
So when push comes to shove, those lessons rise to the top.
Amen.
That's awesome. Thank you for letting us know that we are still, some of us are still in the trenches, but I do have some glimmers of hope. My son is 12. He's not quite a teenager, but it's like he can smell it. It's just like, chomping at the bit. So the other day, he got ready to go to school. He hates being late. I'm always late. He hates being late. He has to be early. So, but he knows our routine. I've been doing the same routine his whole life. So this particular morning, I'm like, my mind is somewhere else, and he's like, okay, Mom, I'm waiting for you. I'm like, what? He's like, I'm waiting for you to pray for me before I go to the bus. And I was like, oh my God, like you want me to pray for you? Like at first, because I would sit there and I pray the same prayer. You're a great man of integrity and honor. You make great decisions. And I just like speak all this stuff over him. And he's kind of like, amen. Thanks. And he's just like, and I'm like, go be great. But this particular day, it was like, he wanted me to pray. It wasn't just like, hurry up and get it over. He's like, Mom, no, I'm waiting for you to pray for me before I go to the bus. And I'm like, whose kid is this? But I think God gives me little glimmers, so the next time he goes to the teenage side, I remember that something good is still in there. Some of it is getting good. Some of it is getting good. So, what do you think trips parents up when they're trying to communicate with their young adults?
I think a lot of times that we listen to respond, and we think we know everything, because like I've been there, I've done that. I'm grown.
Right.
You are not. And so I think in honesty we trip up because we assume we know what's going on based on our own experiences,
Yeah.
and we have the better answer.
Yeah.
And
Obviously.
so, obviously, right? So we're ready to respond all the time, right? So we're ready to respond. And we're always like, you get 3 words out, and we're like, no, but what I said was, and so we respond so quickly that we're not really listening, as opposed to listening to what your children have to say, kind of processing that, and trying to get an understanding, and not just making the judgment call or assuming because I'm the parent and I have the authority to do so. I don't even hear what you said. It doesn't matter. This is what I said.
Yeah.
And that essentially cuts that line of communication and goes back to them feeling like, I don't even want to talk to you because you're not listening anyway.
Yeah, that's true. So, would you agree? Was that something you experienced growing up, or was there anything that stand out to you, if you can remember?
I remember some stuff. I would assume. No, I think one of the things, like, and all my friends would always bring this up. They're like, oh, your mom's so easy to talk to. Like, you can talk to her. And, like, I would explain things to her, just, like, different things that I was going through either at school or, like, stuff that I wanted to do. Like, I would feel like I could come to her and talk about those things. Like, I did feel like she genuinely was listening to me. I mean, she didn't always agree with what I was saying, but I did feel like she was at least listening to me. I didn't have, like, I don't know, like, some of my friends grew up in households where their parents were always yelling at them, or it was, like, just this, like, tension that was there. And I think even now I try to bring that into my relationship with my children. Like, I don't really yell at them unless, like, they're endangering their lives. Then I'm like, okay, you know, like, you might have to raise your voice for that. But other times, I feel like I can just talk to them so that they know that that's the way that you operate in life. Like, you don't get things that you want by just screaming at someone and not listening to what they're saying. Like, so many times, even now, like, my 8-year-old, he just turned 8, like, I'll have to come to him and be like, okay, can we calm down, and then we can decide, like, what we need to do next, or why you're feeling that way. Like, it's just more of this process of being a really, like, calm and, like, gentle kind of person versus, like, no, this is my way, like, this is what you do. And I feel like that's something that I experience, probably for, like, the second, like, half, as I transitioned into a teenager. I think that's really when she started to do a lot more of that, like, just, like, listening to me and asking me questions. When I was in, like, middle school, I feel like it was more of, like, you do have to be more like, okay, this is stern, like, these are the rules, here's what you follow, so that you actually learn it. And then once you get to a point where you kind of learned it, okay, now we open up that relationship and it's a little bit different. So it's changed throughout the seasons because I feel like it's necessary. But it's just, that's something I feel like I experience even, like, now to this day. Like, she's just a very, like, I don't know, just, like, open to having conversation and truly, like, listening to someone. And I always feel like I want to do that more. Like, I want to listen to people, because usually I'm like, oh, what am I saying next? Okay, my heart coming up. Versus, like,
I think we're all a little guilty of that.
Agreed.
Versus, like, that truly, like, listening and then asking the follow-up questions and, like, doing more like that deep dive that I don't always do, but I feel like that's something that she has really excelled at. And maybe that's why you went into, like, social work and stuff like that, because you ask those questions and, like, try to get invested in people's lives. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So I want to take a little nugget out of what you said. So what I basically heard you say was, your mom parented you really well, and now you just impart all the fruits of the Spirit while you're parenting. Why didn't I ever think of that?
That's good. That's good. That's good.
That's like,
I didn't say it.
That's what you do. You're just like, I just have to be kind. I have to be gentle. I have to be loving. I have to listen. I'm just like, yeah, you could do that.
And I will say, she is very good at that. My grandson, 8-year-old, he is very high strung. And so it takes a calming presence to kind of keep him grounded. And she is that calming presence for him.
Oh, that is beautiful. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So you guys touched on this a little bit. When our children become teenagers, they're not always going to agree with everything we parents have to say. How can we respect our teens' right to their opinion while maintaining our authority role as a parent?
I think Arielle did touch on the difference in parenting and seasons, and she's correct. When she was in junior high school,
It's called
middle school, junior high school, call it what you will,
It's
girl.
called junior high up north.
I know. She's going to middle school. In Durham. You digress. Not I do. And so, nonetheless, back at that stage in her life, I was very serious about boundaries and really firm about a lot of things. And at that point, she did not agree with a lot of what my decisions were in terms of things she could or couldn't do that her friends could do. And so as that relationship grew and as she grew emotionally and in age and things of that and matured a bit more, then obviously it changed a little bit, right? So as we're going through those stages, it's really important as a parent to figure out where your child is, first of all, because we all mature at different ages. So what do you need most from me, right? And so you might disagree with me completely. I have been told I ruined your life. Both of my daughters, I've ruined their lives on multiple occasions. I was told that was my goal, and to which my response was and remains: if I'm not ruining your life, I'm not doing my job. So let me do my job. So we went through that whole stage, and oddly enough, I was talking to my niece last night. She made a point, like when they get upset, she was here visiting recently, and she would get upset about something, get mad at me, and I'd be like, okay, like, I'm not entertaining this whole thing. Like, I'm not going to go back and forth with you. I'm not going to get upset and be all riled up now because we're both mad. No. I'd be like, you'll be fine. You'll be okay. You're going to get over it. You're mad at me right now. I know. You are like really mad at me right now. To which, as a teenager, you feel like you can't really respond to that so much other than you just, like, what am I going to say? Like, I'm so mad at you. No, you're just mad. So my niece made the point of telling me last night, and she was laughing. And Auntie, it would make me even more mad that you weren't mad. It's like, well, I've been here a couple of times. I've done this twice with people who get mad at me on a regular basis.
Right.
And so just as the parent understanding that
Yeah.
you're not going to be the best of friends in that phase and being completely okay with it.
Yeah.
Be okay with the fact that you're ruining their lives. Be okay with the fact that you may ask, so how was your day? And it's always just fine. And that's like the answer to everything. You pick them up from school. How was your day? Fine.
Yeah.
What'd you do today? I don't know. What'd you eat for lunch?
You always ask what I ate for lunch. I'm
like you packed the lunch. I'm like, what did you eat for lunch? Like, what happened today? What'd you do? Were you there? So, okay, well, so you're always trying to engage, right? So continue to engage your children, even when it seems like they're not engaged in the process and like they have no desire to talk to you, because as teenagers, they're finding their way in terms of their own identity, building friendships and relationships, and some of those will last a lifetime. She has friends now that she's had since middle school. And so they're building different relationships, which is uncomfortable because we go from this place where we are completely in control of every area of their lives. And although in high school we're still in control, it's changing. And by the time they get to adulthood, you go from being a manager of someone's life to now you're simply a consultant. Like, I can give you my feedback and my input, but at the end of the day, you're going to make a decision. I may completely disagree with you, but you're going to make a decision. So in that process, when they're disagreeing and thinking that you're the meanest person in the world, and you don't want me to have any fun. It's kind of like we look at the Bible sometimes, right? So when we start to really get into God's Word, we understand the difference in His parenting. But before you come to Christ and really have relationship, you're like, well, that just sounds like no fun. I can't do that. You don't want me to. What does the Bible say you can do?
Right.
Y'all can't do nothing, right?
Nothing.
And that's what we think, like you can't do anything. But the truth is, God is protecting us. So things are done in a certain order because that's the best way to care for us and protect us. We don't recognize it as such, and our children won't recognize it. But when they get older, they figure out, oh, wait, you really did love me. You weren't trying to mess up my whole life.
So, what did your mom do anything different? Because you were saying that your household was, the way she parented was, different to your friends as far as you respecting your opinion, but letting you know that I'm still the parent. Can you add anything about that from your experience?
Yeah,
From your child's experience?
I mean, I think that a lot of times, like, she would, well, once we moved into the consultant role, as she would call it, I feel like she still gives so much of, like, her opinion and, like, will tell you kind of what she thinks about a situation and what she would do and what she thinks you should do, those sorts of things, but then does kind of back off for you to just make that decision on your own. And I mean, most times I feel like or probably most people, like to learn the hard way. I mean, if we all learned from somebody else's life, then everybody's life would just be perfect. But I mean, I'll hear her and like, oh, okay, I'm still gonna try it. And so then I would just try and be like, oh, okay, I mean, I guess it made sense that she didn't want me to do that thing. But when it was more like she was the manager of my life, I didn't get to do those things. So it just seemed to me like it was just really unfair. And like my friends would be going to, like, there was some little, it was like, I guess a club for kids, which is weird. But
I'm going to interject in this in a minute, but go ahead.
But there was some club for kids that I really wanted to go to. And she said no probably 1,000 times. And then finally she was like, okay, I'll drive you over there. And so we drove over there. I saw my friends in the line. I was like so excited to get in line. And I was probably there for like 5 minutes. And she was like, nope, you're not going in.
Okay,
like,
so let's explain this club. So indeed it was a club.
But
So let me tell you about the club. The club was actually an adult club. And so they were having, I don't remember if it was upstairs or downstairs for the teens.
I think it was just the downstairs was for the teens.
So the downstairs was for the teens. The upstairs was still the adult club.
Simultaneously, they were going on.
Yes,
Ooh.
simultaneously. And so my point to her before going, if you recall this and you may not, I said to you, there are grown men there. And unfortunately, some people are predators. I worked in a jail at that time for 10 years. And so I said, just to prove the point, yeah, let's go. I'll get in line with you. We get out there. Her friends are up at the front of the line. We're near the back of the line. We're standing in this line. So I pay attention to everything. I'm very observant. And I said, now watch. And we stood there. And all of 2 minutes in, a grown man came out of the entrance of the club and stood there and started like, hey, baby, and some teenage girl who was standing there with no parents and just leaning in and all, And I said, now you see that? Get in the car, let's go. That was my whole point. That this is what's happening out here.
Yeah,
and if other
I
people
get it.
allow their children to go, I can't control that, but I can control this.
That's good.
And so, even in that moment, I was still a horrible parent.
You're right.
Bye.
My
Bye.
friends had so much fun that night. They took all these pictures, and I was supposed to be there. So
She was
yes.
not.
She saved her life. I'm sorry.
So-
I know you thought she ruined it, but way to save her life by ruining her life. Thank you, Raquel. So how do we keep the lines of communication open when our teens don't agree with our guidelines, beliefs, and rules? Because we are Christians, and I know I was raised Christian. I went to college and I started to chant, try to open up my third eye, being down with Deepak Chopra and Super Soul Sundays.
We all
So-
been there.
So how do you still have communication with your children in a way that's healthy, but still, like, as let's say they're 18, 19, they're now in college and you're now that consultant role. How do you, because those things are something that are so dear to me. Like, how do I do that when I don't agree?
You offer them the same grace that God gives us every day.
Ooh,
And understand that there'll be things that we'll completely disagree on. But being clear that no matter what you're doing that's outside of my belief system, I'm not perfect, and I did a lot of things myself. So remembering that there was a point where you were 18, 19, 20 years old, and maybe your mama was sold out for Jesus, but you might not have been at the time. And all of us, we make mistakes. So remembering that, first of all, and then allowing them to understand that, yeah, I disagree, but guess what? It doesn't change my love for you, doesn't change my support
Yeah.
for you. Like, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna pray. I'm gonna pray. And they might get tired of that. Like, and I know when she would come home from school, I was always saying, let's go to church, let's go to church, like, let's go to church, let's go. You know,
Plans.
she always had plans, right? Like, oh, you want to celebrate Halloween? Don't you want to go to church? Don't you want to? You know, and she's like, ah. But she would go like Christmas Eve. She'd come to church with us. She'd come to the special occasions, right? Like, let me go to church with Mama so she could be happy about this. And then she'd do what she did. And even in that, like coming home to visit, when you're away at school, you can come in whenever you want to. But then you come back home, and I'm like, you need to be in the house by. And you're like, lady, what? You know. And so there were issues.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, just being mindful that, you know what, you are a young adult and you're coming into your own. I only have so much control. I could spend all the time that you're here visiting, arguing and fighting, or I could call you every day to talk trash, or I could call you every day just because I want to know how you're doing. I would tell both my girls when they were at school that I will never be the parent that 3 days later says, I don't know where she is. I haven't talked to her in 3 days. No, I just talked to her 30 minutes ago. Because I'm like her stalker. Like, I'm still calling. Look, she got stories. But I'm still checking in. So
Right.
I'm just going to call you every day to make sure you're okay. Do you need groceries? Like, what can I do to support you? What's going on? Oh, you want to join this sorority. How'd that go? Whatever's happening, I just want to stay engaged in that process. And so at some point, if you're praying for them, it turns around. It does. It may not feel like it in the moment, and you may want to just shake your kid and be like, listen, go to church. There's churches in that town. Go find you some good Bible-toting friends.
Right.
Go get a small, you might want to say all these things, but at the end of the day, we've all got to figure it out. Like she said, if I learned from my mother's mistakes and you learn from your mother, we'd all be perfect people. This would be a perfect world. And everyone would be like, oh no, well that person did that and that didn't work out. I'm just going to do the right thing. No. So ultimately, we just got to give them grace, love, and support. Even when we're feeling like, Lord, what's happening? I don't know. That's not what we want you to do. Like, but it turns around. And
Grace, love, and support.
when she came back from school, when she moved here, because I moved to Georgia the year you graduated, after she graduated.
Yeah.
And the following year, she got married. And when she moved to Georgia, one of the first things she said is, what church are we going to?
Oh,
And
Jesus.
It was, you might not remember. You guys were
Hashtag
accepted.
goldfish.
And right? And so I had been between churches because I had been here for a year, and I started going to one church, and it just didn't feel like that's where I belonged. Someone had told her about our current church, someone had told me, and then someone told my younger daughter. And when she came and said, what church are we going to? I was like, I don't know, but I'm going next Sunday. I'm going to find this church right now. Well, the person, they told me, let's go try this church.
Try this one.
Myself and my younger daughter went to church, and I was like, that's it. That's where we belong. You need to come to the church that people told us God was leading us to the church. They came the next Sunday, and we have not left since.
That's beautiful. Wow.
But had you asked me in college, like, okay, I would not have thought she was coming to ask me anything about church except for how long are we going to be here?
Well, the church that we went to was very long.
Back home, it would be long.
Yeah. It was a whole day.
Listen, we had
Yes.
issues with,
I grew up in a church
issues.
like that. Yeah.
We
I did.
would,
Yeah.
as I said, she's not a morning person. So when we got up to go to church in the morning, I'd be, get up, we go, by the time she was about
You literally
17,
pull off the entire blanket, and I pretend I was up. I'm like, oh, okay. Put it back on.
finally, by the time she was about 17, I said, the Lord is not forceful. And I'm not going to fight. If every Sunday I got to have an attitude when I get to church because I done fought you to get here, you pouting. I said, no. I said, you know what? If you don't go, I'm not even going to bother. We still going out to our Sunday lunch, and you won't get a bite to eat. You just eat some cereal or whatever you. I will not. And she was, and didn't bother her any.
It was great. You had to her going, this is amazing.
This is amazing. Living her best life. So, I just had to learn that it was whatever, you know. I could only do what I could do.
That's good. Did you want to add anything to that, Arielle? I mean, I know you touched on it a bit, but anything that you remember on how she allowed you to navigate that? But that was a great example she just gave. Was there anything else?
No, I think she's just always been persistent. So still showing that, like, hey, this matters. Even if it is like she's just going to church, like that's still an example. Like I'm seeing her constantly do that, and literally, like, it was a whole day experience. So for her to invest her entire day, then it's important.
11 o'clock service, 6 o'clock service.
Her entire day.
Oh yeah. Woo. Yeah. Sunday school, right through service that lasted
Yes, ma'am.
10 till 3.
Yeah, and then sometimes they would have
That's what-
fellowship, which I was like, okay, so you really are not leaving the building.
And then
you
you
go
have
into the
evening
little hall,
service. Yeah.
eat some food, and then you come back
Yeah,
inside. Yeah. So, I mean, if she invested that much, like, to me it just showed like, oh, this must be really important to
Yeah.
her.
Exactly.
So,
That's
so yeah, I mean, still seeing that example and like the persistence, and then once I was like ready, just being like, oh, okay, now's the time to actually,
That's so good.
you know, enter into whatever it is, instead of like continuing to try to force it. Because like I said, or what she was saying, like it was like a forceful process every Sunday, and I almost hated it just because of that. Not even because I didn't like going to church. It was just like I just hated her waking me up early. Like this is my day to sleep in. Like, you know, so and then it did get to a point where like I enjoyed some of the services. So like our New Year's Eve service, that was probably one of my favorite services, and I always wanted to go to that. Like I didn't need anyone to force me. It was a good time of day. Like
Yes.
I wanted to go. So,
Perfect.
Fit into your lifestyle.
exactly. So I enjoyed going to church. It was just like the time wasn't the time that I wanted to go. So I needed the flexibility to be able to just come into it myself. And then if it's like it's important enough to me, then I'll make time for it. Whereas now, like we'll go to service. We don't go to 11 o'clock. We go to 1 because it still works best for us. But like I will make sure that we get there to that particular service because it's important.
That's
But
so
yeah.
good. Oh, that is wonderful. This is why I invited you guys. You're the best. Absolute best. So what if you didn't establish healthy communication strategies with your children? Is it too late to start when they're teenagers?
I have to say it's never too late. In my work as a therapist, I've worked with families that have struggled and had different boundaries and that they set up because their relationships weren't healthy early on. So maybe there was something toxic in nature, some traumatic experience. So it's never too late. It's a matter of having a willing heart and really being gentle and kind with each other. Because what happens is when we shut down that communication early on, then we get to this place, you have a teenager who's already coming to their own, feeling all these different emotions and feeling like, well, you don't care anyway, and I can't talk to them, and I don't want to talk to them. And so they kind of completely sever that relationship, even if they're in the same household. I've seen people in the same household who just don't want to talk to each other other than, hi, you hungry? Okay. You go in school? Okay, see you later. And there's nothing more. So it's never too late. Just how much work are you willing to put into it? It's going to be work. There's going to be some hurt feelings. People blame each other for the reason that, you know, we never look at ourselves, so they blame each other for the reasons that they don't talk to each other. Well, you did this or you did that. And recognizing that there are ways to get around some of those things, right? So just being really open to whatever that's going to bring. And a lot of times we have to be open to having help in the process.
That's good.
So,
So you don't have to expect, if you haven't established this, you don't have to expect that you're supposed to automatically just know everything yourself.
no.
So that's,
No.
don't put that pressure on yourself to say, oh, well, okay, I want to do this, so now I need to figure it out. You're saying that you can get help.
You can get help, and a lot of times that's in the form of professional counseling, a therapist. Have someone mediate that conversation for you, and it may mean that you're sitting in the room at one time talking to this counselor, and they're helping you through the process, and then your child's in the room, and then maybe you come together. But it's highly unlikely, if you've never established it, that you're just gonna magically everything's gonna work out, and you're like, okay, I'm a great parent now, you're a great kid, let's talk about it.
Great, and I also want to say, I want to encourage moms to know that if this is something that you've identified and say, okay, I want this now. I don't have it yet. My daughter's 15. I want this. It doesn't make you any less spiritual or loving in God if you don't have this established. You don't feel that you're somehow inadequate for seeking counseling and getting tools and resources, because God put those here for us to utilize. I think sometimes as Christians, we're like, I'm just going to pray. Well, you can pray, yes, but you can also go see a counselor.
Yeah, I like to remember, faith without works is dead.
Right.
So that might mean I
Yeah.
need some assistance. And God has given us, like you said, all these tools and resources, and we just leave them all sitting on the table, like, oh no,
Well,
I'll
God, I
do
said
it
you were going to
myself.
fix it. I sent you to your church and they have counselors there. And I told her to go to school for counseling so that she could help you and your daughter. So, I mean, God is very intentional. We live in our day and our age, and He's very intentional for those reasons, because we can utilize those things. And I think a lot of times there's a stigma, especially in the African American community, but also in the Christian community, that somehow your faith is lacking if you're seeking some type of emotional counseling or mental counseling, something that you need assistance with, that somehow you just didn't pray enough, you didn't fast enough, and that's a myth, and I just want to put that to bed.
It definitely is. I have to agree with you wholeheartedly that that is something we need to stop believing, and knowing that God sends help in different ways. It's kind of like any other area of your life, right? If you're unhealthy, if you've got diabetes, if you've got high blood pressure, you go to a doctor. And they help you walk through this process of figuring out what that looks like to change it. It might mean just your diet and some exercise. It might mean medication, but you're open to it. But when we say that emotionally I'm not well, we're struggling, all of a sudden it becomes, well, let me pray some more. I've been praying every day, but let me just keep praying because God will fix it. And He will, but He might fix it at the doctor's office,
Yes.
in the therapist's chair. It might be a pill that you're taking for a period of time to be able to cope. It might be teaching you coping mechanisms that you're not familiar with. So whatever it is, be open to it, because if not, you may stop the blessing in the healing process.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's a process. I want us to understand that. Like, it's ongoing, it's continual, and it has a variance of tools that help you get to the goal.
Amen.
So, I'm sorry, were you going to say something to that?
I think I was.
Okay. I didn't want to leave you out because I kind of got on my soapbox, because I'm really passionate about that, because I think sometimes we just negate it as somehow it's not applicable. I am a Christian, I don't need that. So, Arielle, if you had to pick one thing that your mom did that made all the difference in your communication with her when you were a teenager, what would that one thing be?
Oh.
It doesn't have to be like an instance, but just whatever comes up.
Yeah. It's really jogging my memory. So I can think of one moment in particular that I feel like things kind of changed in my mind. So it was really dumb in that time, but I mean, well, it's dumb now. It wasn't then. But I was dating this guy that I felt like I was in love with, and I was like, we are absolutely going to be together forever. Like, I love him. And my mom said to me, she was like, well, if you think you love him, then, you know, like, that's okay. Like, you can say that you love him. And for me, I don't know why that was like a moment. I was like, oh, like, you'll let me say I love someone?
Wow.
And so, like, I still think back to that, and then, like, because we were sitting in, it was Nana's room at the time. We were sitting in there, and we were talking, and then he called me, and I was like, hey, Lobo, we had a little conversation. I was like, I love you.
That's okay, I can do that.
Like my mom said it.
That
is so cute.
That just, I don't know, it felt like she was seeing me differently, and that she was allowing me to, like, have my own mind and my own opinion about things and all that stuff. And then we ended up breaking it up like 2 weeks later. Right. But it was totally fine. We were in love.
So in love.
But that was like a really like a big moment for me, because I still remember it, and as you know, goldfish memory. So it was like one of those moments that stood out, that I was really seen as like an individual, and that she valued my opinion about things, or just allowed me to be me, even though I'm sure she knew, like, you're not in love with this.
We got 3 weeks.
But she was just, like, she just agreed to let me just do what I felt like was love. And so, yeah, that was a moment for me.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, do you remember that?
Not at all.
If she told you the boy, would you even know?
I would probably remember the boy.
Yeah,
I
probably.
remember, the guys or what have you. And I honestly, as long as things were within reason, she's right. I came to a point where I can't argue what you feel. Your feelings are always valid. I may know as a mother that, like, this is not love. You will not be with him forever. But I'm not going to break your heart. That'll happen in a few weeks. So,
Right.
and you'll get over it
The
in
progressive
4
design law
days.
have nothing to do with it.
Exactly. And so, I don't know who this was. I don't.
He was Jamaican. You were?
Oh, very early on.
Yeah.
You were young. Yeah, I do remember this one. And that wasn't gonna last. But I think where we get caught up as parents is a lot of times, like, it's uncomfortable to hear your teenager say, "Oh, I love this boy." You're like, "Girl, you don't know anything about love. You don't love that boy. That boy don't love you. You don't even know that boy." This is what you're thinking. But
Yeah.
to have that conversation, then it makes him so much more appealing. If I say, "That's not for you," and this is,
Yeah.
he's now looking even more appealing. Like, "Oh, I'm gonna be with him forever. I'm gonna hold on and dig my nails and my
Yeah.
teeth in. Darn it, I'm not letting him go." Whereas
Just to
if
spite mom. Yeah.
yes, because I'm gonna prove you wrong. It doesn't matter. Like, I know that this is temporary, and you're growing, and you'll love him, and you'll think you love someone else, and you'll move forward as long as this is all healthy,
Right.
And it is a healthy part of growing up. It's just life. So, yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so Arielle, you are a postpartum mental wellness coach, and this was birthed from a tough place in your life. Looking back, can you talk to us about how the healthy communication practices you and your mom established as a teen attributed to your ability to reach out for help after you had the baby?
Yes, I think there's kind of two things, like reaching out for help to like loved ones, and then there's reaching out to help to professionals. But just kind of thinking about my relationship with her and the communication skills that I had, I knew that I could reach out to her as the first person to say, "Hey, here's what I'm going through, like, I need your help with this." And so it was really easy for me to do that. And I think, so I struggled with postpartum depression after having my first son, and he's the one who's 8. And I did share that with her, but that was a time of like massive denial for me. I was just like, I am not depressed, like, let's just put this down and I'll pretend like everything's good. And from that, and a lot of the lessons that she even taught me through that experience, which is a whole nother story, it really taught me to be more open and transparent and just have those conversations and not feel like you have to pretend to be someone that you're not, or you have to pretend like everything's okay when it's not. And so it was really easy for me to have that conversation with her and tell her. And then even more than that, it was really easy for me to tell my small group. And so I shared that literally with my entire small group, and there would be days when I would just go to a small group and I would sit on the couch and I was probably crying for like 80% of the meeting, but I still went because I wanted them to like see me, I'm here, like I need you guys. And it was just like a really open and transparent like time for me. But it was something that I think was like, I was able to do that because I had the communication skills and I knew that it was okay to not be okay, which is something that's really, I think, difficult. Most of us think like we have to be perfect and life has to be great. And if it's not, you don't share it. And so I did the total opposite. I shared everything, probably overshared with everybody. And out of that came this experience of other people like, oh, I was struggling with that too, but I felt like I was crazy and nobody else talked about it, and everybody else just pretended like postpartum was so great. And I was just like, I mean, there are all these people who are going through this and no one's talking about it because we all feel like we're supposed to be okay. And like it says in the Bible, in this life you will have trouble. Like it's a known thing. Yet for some reason we think that it's supposed to be like roses, butterflies, like rainbows. And then when it's not, we're like, oh, don't tell anybody you're feeling like that. You don't want them to think you're crazy. You're like, but that's a part of life. And so I think a lot of the communication skills that I've learned and things that I learned growing up, it was like, oh, I mean, I should say something about this. I should tell other people like, here's what I'm struggling with. And so I reached out to my small group, and then even more than that, I reached out to professionals. So I saw a therapist, someone that she recommended who was amazing. And that was my first time really participating in therapy. And I say participating because I went before and I didn't participate.
Not.
I sat on the couch
Accounted for.
and yeah, she asked me questions. I'm like, yeah, no, yeah. Like that was my entire 45 minutes. But then this time I was like, oh, let me actually try this thing that she talks about, because she was saying how beneficial it will be, and obviously that's her line of work and stuff. And so I was like, okay, I'll try talking to her. And she's amazing. Highly recommend going to a therapist if you are struggling with something, or if it's a relationship or something personally, whatever it is. Like, you need people to talk with. Like, you need someone to walk alongside you at times. And so I reached out for help and got additional help from doctors and whatever else I needed to do. Like, I was willing to do all of that because I knew that it was okay to just be open and communicate and not have to like hide or hold everything in.
Oh, that was so good. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just really want moms to really understand how key it is that you're going to be that place. Like, God is giving you stewardship over your daughter's life in this season, and you can really play a role that will be able to help her develop this skill set, being a healthy communicator. So when she's an adult woman and she's once again facing those trials that life is guaranteed to bring us, because it tells us in the Word that she's able to communicate, to get the help that she needs when those trials come forth. I think that was our last question. Do you have any final
I
thoughts?
do have one thing to piggyback off of that. I want to say to those mothers that are watching this, realize that you are not failing if your child needs help. That's not you.
That's so good.
So many times we think, oh, I can fix it, I'll help you through it. But when I can't, then you feel like, oh man, I'm really letting my kid down, like I'm failing. What else can I do? Recognize that there's a God who's greater than us, and sometimes you're not the person that's supposed to help in this particular phase of the healing process. So it might be that amazing therapist, it might be the small group, it could be any number of people, and you've just got to be okay with it. And I will tell you, it will be an uncomfortable space sometimes. Just sit in a space and see someone comfort your child is like, okay, well, so I was going to slap her, but that would be good for a show. But, you know, that's not good communication. But to watch that process is kind of like, wow, okay, so there's someone who can give my child something that I can't give them. And recognizing that that's completely okay, because you're not perfect and you don't have everything. So you give what you can in the process and help them be open to seeking out the help in other spaces, and support them in that process. If that means sitting in the room with them with the therapist initially to make them comfortable, or to talk through what's going on.
Yes.
You don't mind me sharing some of that, right? Okay, I didn't think so. But when she went to this amazing therapist that I referred her to, I went into the therapy sessions with her at first, and a lot of that was because she wasn't in a great place, so she ended with her goldfish memory. She may not remember something that was key and important, and she'd say, Mom, was that all? Or did I, and I might have something to add from a different perspective.
That's so good.
So just supporting it and then letting them do what they need to do, whatever that looks like. It might mean you just sitting in the car and waiting. And so when this is over, they've got some support. It might mean watching your grandchildren, whatever it means, do that thing and feel okay with it. No, I'm not failing. I'm supporting you in the way that I can best help you.
Yes, that was so good. You are not failing. You are helping your daughter. That's so good. Well, I think that about does it for today. Thank you, ladies, so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us. This has been a delight.
Did you enjoy that episode? Well, it's not over yet. We want to keep this discussion going. Hop over to the Cherished Daughters Revolution Facebook group and leave a comment now. If this content is engaging, helpful, and empowering, please subscribe and share with your friends. Let's be real, parenting teens can be hard, but you are who God chose to guide her to adulthood. Keep going, Mom. You have everything she needs. God's equipped you for this, and we're here to help supplement. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next episode.